In today's podcast, we talked about personal training standards, and I did a little bit of a side swerve and started talking a little bit about how to be successful in fitness this year. So today, we're going to have a conversation about personal training standards. So this is quite an interesting one because I think the personal training world, gym world, is a really unique industry. So it's kind of an area where you have a lot of different types of people. Obviously, want to get fit, want to work out, and they're all from different backgrounds, different industries, themselves professionally. But when they go into a gym, it's a very uncomfortable place unless you have literally spent your whole time in the gym or learnt what to do in the gym. And so what I've found is that certainly in the personal training world, the base standard is not what you would expect if, for example, you were dealing with your accountant or a solicitor or any other professional, because it's kind of a funny industry in the sense of you're in your shorts, t-shirt, you're casual in your dress, and that often means that it's very easy for personal trainers, any kind of gym environment to become almost unprofessional from probably a lot of basic standards. So when we talk about what professional standards are in personal training, there's some basic ones that I would consider as a personal trainer. Starting on time and finishing on time are very critical, basic standards, but it's very common. I've seen it a million times. I train in quite a few different gyms and have done over the years, and I've seen so many occasions where you always see it because you'll see someone stood around waiting. They're clearly waiting for someone, and you'll see a trainer run through the door, and it's like 8:05 in the morning or whatever time it is, and you can quite clearly see they're late. And it's not like everyone can be late occasionally, one off. But what you see is I've seen these things happen repetitively, and it's really interesting to me because I've seen, and I actually had a conversation with a gentleman. He owned a really, really large business, and he was telling me how he had loads of team members, I think 300 or something along those lines. And it always baffled me because his trainer would turn up late every day, because I was the same gym I used to train in, and he'd be training there, most days, and it would be consistently turning up late. And I was kind of baffled by it because this gentleman was telling me how he ran his company and things, because I was just interested in speaking to him, and he was, saying how he's got a large number of staff and the standards he'd hold everyone to. Yet, interestingly, he wasn't holding his professional in fitness, his personal trainer, to those same standards. And I couldn't quite understand why. But then it dawned on me that in that environment, that gentleman it's not his environment. So he doesn't have that same confidence he has in his business life or his other areas of his life in the gym. So he's just not confident enough to be able to hold what is should be a professional position as a personal trainer. Anyone that's helping someone physically is, a very, very important position, and he just wasn't comfortable in that environment. So I think that plays a large part into the accepted standard within the gym world and the fitness world, the personal training world. So there's a number of these different scenarios that can come about because of that kind of casual environment. So, like I said, starting on time, finishing on time. Now, occasionally I've done sessions before, and yes, there's a lot of chatter, a lot of fun, and that everyone is happy to, finish a little bit later because, they're perhaps not rushing off. But as a general standard, the ability to start on time and finish on time is quite important, because obviously everyone has places to go after a session. And what you always find is that no one's going to want to say, "Oh, look, you're giving us extra time. I don't need it. I've got to go off." But it's you would not expect, I don't know, other professional industries, like I always look at solicitors, accountants, to be super late if you're having a meeting with them and things like that. So it's kind of an area that's overlooked within personal training. It's an area at training gyms we focus on quite well. It's just one of the standards we focus on because we do know it to be very, very important. So there's quite a few different areas standards-wise that you want to look at. So I always think of this kind of conversation around how to choose a personal trainer, because personal training is an interesting area because it's both an art and a science. So obviously there's a lot of technical knowledge that's necessary, but there's a lot of what's the word? Probably people skills. So it would be very much like your doctor. You can have a technical doctor, doesn't have much bedside manner. You can't really have that in a personal trainer because you're going to spend a considerable amount of time with this person, either one-to-one or in a group. And there needs to be a lot of other areas than technical because, for example, one of the biggest kind of predictors of success I've seen with people in fitness, it's not whether they technically are doing every exercise perfectly correctly. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're doing it and you're going to injure yourself, it's a different matter. But you have to want to go back and train, right? So if you are you're having a perfectly technical session delivered, but it's not fun, well, there's not many of us that really are going to drag ourselves back to do something that is quite hard work and is something that we don't see the benefit from straight away. It's one of those unique things. You can go into the gym, work really hard, walk out, and you've got nothing. Like maybe you're sweating, but you've tangibly got nothing. You haven't walked out with something. You're having to know that the effort that you just put in is down the road doing you benefit. So it's quite a unique scenario. So the experience that you have whilst training is critically important because it's what keeps you coming back. So that's why I say it's an art and a science, because the session has to be fun, right? And again, this is where when you talk about professional standards, that's the tricky part because you have to be fun. It has to be fun, but it can't then become unprofessional because there's that fine line. So there's quite a few things going on, I think, in the gym, the personal training world, to make this kind of fine line between it's got to be fun, you've got to be technically helping people, getting them better, and they've got to enjoy it so that they want to come back. Because ultimately, in fitness, it's the repetition that has the impact, not the one-off session. So people have to want or have walked out enjoying, because you've got to enjoy something. And when you're not, if you've not grown up in the gym and you're trying to achieve something, well, it's potentially not enjoyable. The actual act of exercising. So the lifting of the weight, the pushing of yourself, that might not be enjoyable initially. I mean, in the end, you can get to that stage, but not always. So you have to enjoy the overall experience. And again, that's something that's overlooked. So particularly when we're in the new year, right? So you're thinking about how a lot of people have goals and things that they want to achieve. And one of the under or overlooked things is the environment I'm going to put myself into. Okay, so for example, you have to be comfortable in that environment to go back repeatedly, not where it takes you a lot of mental energy to G yourself up to go. So for example, if you're not comfortable in a big box gym, there's many big box gyms where there's going to be lots and lots of people, maybe a lot of people that aren't the same as you. They could be younger, they could be fitter, they could be any number of things. Well, if you can make yourself go initially for the first few occasions, you can, of course, but it can take quite a lot of what I term emotional energy. And if that takes a lot of emotional energy, whilst you've got that energy at the beginning, the new year, new you, all this type of thing, well, you'll get there. But we're not really actually talking about those initial visits. We're talking about 6 weeks' time when you've worked hard. You're still kind of not seen that much physical change yet because it takes time. That emotional energy that it will still take you to go to the gym can actually be draining. And that's when what you see people's attendance start to drop off, which is probably, one of the factors why, yes, towards February or in the beginning of February, I think things drop off. But you have to think about the environment you're going to put yourself in because it has to attract you. Okay, it can't. There is no neutral with the environment you're going to put yourself into. So it's like, oh, I go to the gym and, it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. There is no neutral. So it's either attractive or it's working against your goals. So that's one thing to bear in mind, which is the environment you're going to put yourself in. Is this an environment in the long run that I'm going to enjoy being in, around the people around? Like, even if you're not going to talk to other people there, you still have to feel comfortable. So if you're, for example, not really ever lifted weights before or exercised properly, consistently before, and you're going in there where clearly everyone knows what they're doing, big weights are banging around, people are in big groups, younger groups perhaps, well, for some people that might be okay, but you have to really do a self-audit, and not like a self-audit where today when I'm super motivated, it's the new year and I'm ready to go. Not today audit, but like your normal, I'm a bit tired, stress from work, all of those other considerations, and be honest with yourself and say, would I still be able to get myself up to then be in that environment? Because if you can't say that you will, well, you're almost teeing up a lack, well, what's the other word than success? Basically, you're teeing up issues with attendance, because there's going to come a time where you're stressed, where you're tired, where all of these things are working against you. And suddenly getting up, going into that area, that space, you just don't have the energy to do it because of all this other stuff. So it's a really big thing to bear in mind. I don't think people do necessarily. I don't know how I got sidetracked onto that from personal training standards, but it's something to be aware of. So yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I could go on about this for a while and probably do, how do we keep personal training or the training standards high at the training gyms? And we'll talk through a little bit of the things that we do and the training that we do with the training team and what we train on, because I think it's useful to know, because if you're thinking about how to get fit, particularly this time of year, well, then it gives you more knowledge as to how to kind of judge things. Because again, it's no different. Like if I was going into a court of law or a solicitor or whatever, I actually don't really know what's a really good solicitor, for example. How would you know? You have to almost have an amount of knowledge to be able to then know what is good. And so the idea behind these podcasts is to give you arm you with that knowledge to be able to make better informed decisions that are right for you. Come back next time.